what's the point of an opinion poll to influence my decision? Maggie Ireri, who is the founder and CEO of TIFA Research, an institution that is involved in market, social, and polling. Just to understand what is the significance of political opinion polls, even as we head towards our August 9th general elections. What are some of the critical points that will say these are the things we look into when we conduct an opinion poll, mostly when it comes to a presidential candidate or a leading political coalition or party?
So we look at behavioral intentions of the voters as a start. So one of the things we're looking at now, we're asking people, are you a registered voter or not? We want to calculate on a general population of people 18 plus, how many are registered voters. Right now we're finding it's already in the 95% plus, which is good. We then ask them, do you intend to vote in the next election? Again, that's an intention. We then ask issues as, what are the most pressing issues facing you as a Kenyan that a presidential candidate needs to address? Now already we're beginning to collect information that could inform the manifesto of the political candidates. And then thereafter, of course, we ask evaluations that we held today, who do you vote for? Which political party or alliance do you feel closest to? And once in a while, we do ask specific questions. Like in our last survey, we did ask about whether Kenyans were aware about the running mates that had been named.
So would you say the undecided vote, which is the majority, first voters, or those between age of 18 to 34?
The undecided voters, as per the last survey we did, were leaning more towards the younger generation. Those are voters aged 18 to 34. Women. Yeah, there were more women who are undecided as compared to men. And then we had people from certain regions that were undecided. Voters from Mount Kenya, voters from Lower Eastern, that is Machakos and Kitui and Makueni, and Western region had a more percentage of undecideds. And also, if you look at the issues around those regions, one region is led by Kalonzo Musyoka, who has not been clear on his political leaning. Western Kenya has been a battleground, has always been a battleground. And this time, it looks like the dynamics on that region are making more people undecided. Mount Kenya has been a place where predominantly supporting William Ruto, but there seems to be a proportion of those in that region who are not clear how they will vote, and it's quite a big number.
I've ideally seen these political campaigns and the presidential candidates that have been presented, and I've made my choice. So what's the point of an opinion poll to influence my decision between now and the next 75 or 80 days?
I want you to imagine, and let's say for a minute, let's imagine that there are no opinion polls, and there've been no opinion polls for the last 2 years prior to the election. So what would happen is that all of us would go to the ballot box blind. And then when the results come out, I think everyone would be shocked. It could even end up being a situation where there's a bit of political tension and so on. So one of the benefits of opinion polling is that it begins to provide an indication of what is likely to happen. And if there's an indication of what's likely to happen, there are no surprises. Where we are now and how it's evolving is that it's going to be a very tight race between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. The writing is on the wall, the results are out, and therefore, assuming either one of them wins, it will not be a shock to anyone. And I think it is better to go into an election with that kind of predictability rather than not knowing what is happening. I hear in Angola they have banned opinion polls. So imagine people going to walk into the ballot box not knowing what will happen. Now, on the question of influencing voters, do opinion polls influence voters? I would say no, because I've met quite a number of people telling me, I've seen your opinion polls and I disagree with them and I'm going to vote for this person, even though you're saying this other person is going to win. I want to give you a story of what happened, I think it was in the 2007 election when Kalonzo stood. When we did our polls, consistently Kalonzo was polling at 10%. And when the election happened, he ended up, I think, with around 9% voting or vote support. So the poll showed he was going to get 10. He ended up with 9. So we went to Machakos County and were doing some sort of informal interviews and were asking people, did you see the opinion polls that were published by this company? They said yes. What support was Kalonzo given in that poll? About 10%. Did you vote for him, or did that poll influence you? And people are saying, we decided we better vote for him now, because if we give him that 10%, he'll be an important factor in the future. So what am I trying to say? Opinion polls do not necessarily influence the voting choices.
And we've seen countries like in the US where opinion polls are taken very seriously during the elections period. That's not the case in our country.
On the contrary, I think opinion polls are taken very seriously because let me give you the level of attention. The level of attention, of course, the media do publish them. Have you seen the reactions, whether they are positive or negative, by the politicians? And on social media goes active when an opinion poll are released. So they are taken seriously to the point that people want to defend or criticize them because they know the stakes that these opinion polls have on the political career or political clout of various parties and individuals.
You have all these institutions or firms that conduct opinion polls, more or like to the same group or scope of people. Then you find totally different results.
It is possible that different companies can provide different results in opinion polls, but what you need to look at is how the sample is distributed, the timing. A survey could be done a week ago, and then within that, the next couple of days, some certain political events happen that could change the results. And that's why opinion polls vary from one company to another. But in terms of identifying whether the opinion poll is authentic, again, I still go back to looking at the methodology, checking the authenticity of the organization, and then the authenticity of the institutions behind it. Once that is done, it is then you look at the results and say, if these results are coming out now, what is the context? If I can give you an example, we have been doing opinion polls, and I also know quite a number of organizations that are doing opinion polls. The thing that has been varying is the number of undecided voters and the number of people who refuse to answer. Now, assuming you are to, and we did this before, because our data had a lot of undecided voters. When we removed the undecided voters from our sample and reanalyzed, and then the other firm removed the undecided voters from their sample and reanalyzed, the percentages were at par. So there's a way you can evaluate to find out, are the two opinion polls within some sort of similarity or not?
Maybe from a personal point of view, do you vote based on the agenda of the political leaders or parties, or would you vote based on your latest opinion poll, you as a voter?
Oh gosh, I'm a scientist and at the same time a voter. Yeah. You see, at my level, I have too much data. So by the time I am going to make a decision, I have looked at the opinion polling data. I have looked at what Kenyans are saying about a particular candidate. And you see me, I have a helicopter view. I know what Kenyans are saying in the coast and all that. So I do use my data, not the final percentages, but I use the perceptions of Kenyans to inform the decision that I make on the actual day. And just to let you know, I don't make a decision on who to vote for until 1 week to the election. Yes, because I need to remain independent from this polling process.
So ideally, we would say there's a point in Kenyan voter looking critically into the opinion polls to shape their decision in voting. You
know, there are two effects. There's also what you call the underdog voting. There's an election where we had a candidate called Dida, yes, and he was an underdog. People looked at the data and they said, oh, this guy is not doing very well. And they felt that the candidate 1 and 2 was not appealing to them. So when they went to vote, they said, you know what? We'll go with the underdog. Let me vote for this person and just increase his support. So I think what will matter is the extent to which the presidential candidates are able to appeal to the voter. If they're not able to appeal to the voter, then the voter is likely to vote maybe for an underdog. But if they appeal to the voter will be checking, maybe the last opinion poll by TIFA said this, and I disagree with that opinion poll. I need to mobilize my friends and go and vote for my candidate. Or it could be that the last opinion poll showed that my person is doing better, so let me vote for him. So it could go either way. But the net effect is that it is possible that whatever happens in an opinion poll, it ends up happening on the ground where people don't change their voting choices.
Okay. Yeah. So my last question then would be, would you feel that opinion poll tends to create tension, where tension is basically not necessary? Because if I come from Western region, for instance, and the opinion poll shows that candidate B, who is not necessarily the majority choice, is winning or losing grounds in that area, does it create tension among voters?
So let's look at this in terms of two aspects. There's the presidential opinion polls and the county opinion polls. So let's look at the presidential opinion polls. If you look at the region, and apart from Nairobi, most of the regions are largely homogeneous, meaning me and my neighbor probably have the same political opinions. So you may find that if we say that a particular candidate is leading in Western, his support is significantly higher than the other candidates, meaning the voting is almost homogeneous. So therefore, you'll find within the neighborhood, people have similar views, and therefore at that level, at a presidential level, the tension is not high. Now let's come to Nairobi. In Nairobi, where the race is like neck to neck, there's a likelihood of you and I being neighbors, being workmates, or being family members have different voting opinions. So I would say that the tension is likely to be in places where it's hotly contested, and that is predominantly Nairobi. Now, is the tension bad? Where we've gotten to after the 2007 elections, 2013 elections, etc., I think Kenyans are mature. There could be tensions, but the tensions will not necessarily lead to
violence.
Exactly, violence. Okay. So it is healthy tension. Now let's go to the polls we do at a county level. If I was to do a poll today in Mombasa, in Kirinyaga, I'm thinking about the hotly contested areas, in Kakamega, etc., it is so tight where the candidates are almost at par. Now at that level, if you release a poll, people are like, no, it's not possible, because they know a neighbor who supports somebody else, whereas I support a different candidate. So there could be some tension. But again, I just want to emphasize, the tension is usually healthy, where I feel voters say, even though the poll has said that my candidate is not ahead, I'm going to work hard to convince people or to transport people to the ballot box to make him or her win.